So welcome to those that have just joined us. We're here at VivaTech live in Paris. We're here for our next topic, which is digital connection to fight exclusion. I am with Karen, who's remotely with us. I can see her there, co-founder and CEO of Isolation. Thank you so much for being with us. And Jean, you are the founder of and CEO, of course, of Konexio. Thank you so much as well for being on the set here with us today. Are you well?
Happy to be here.
Great. If you wish to share your comments or your questions, those dear people that are watching us from wherever you are around the world, we'd be happy to answer those questions a little bit later on in the discussion. We have about 26 minutes together right now, and those who are in the room with us today as well, if you have questions to answer, no worries, send them through via the chat. So, Karen, I'm going to start with you. We haven't heard you yet. Studies have found that social isolation and loneliness are obviously a major risk that have been linked with poor and physical mental health. Can you tell us about what you do and who you're actually helping today with No Isolation?
Yes, so I think we try to sum up everything we do in our name. No Isolation means a lot to us, and we do that by developing warm technology and gathering and sharing knowledge. So we do quite a lot of research into the loneliness and social isolation space, and there's been done extensive research here before as well. So we're trying to spread that word, and I think it's crucial for everyone to know that just feeling lonely over time is actually seriously damaging to your physical health as well. It's been proven to increase your risk of having a stroke by 32%, increasing your risk of having heart disease by 29%, and that's comparable to smoking. So we should really be interested in helping people feel less lonely and talking about how we can connect to others. So specifically, we make communication tools for groups that are more forcibly socially isolated, and hopefully inspiring other companies to work on this subject as well.
Okay, and so technology has proven effects on isolation, is that correct?
Definitely, both good and bad. So there's extensive research here as well. Technology is luckily or unfortunately just a tool. So it will do whatever you design it to do. And I think for our sake, what we've found, we've created this robot for kids with long-term illness, and by now we can prove that it actually helps these kids get back to school once they're well again. It increases their happiness during their illness, and it increases their attendance and belonging in class. So there are a lot of positive effects that can be found in technology, but we've all probably also experienced ourselves the potential negative effects of technology. So we need to be very aware, and we need to measure the effects of the tools that we're using on a social level. Mental.
How hard is it to actually reach out to people who are not connected, Karen, to tech and to the digital world? I suppose you're sort of relying on different partnerships that you've created as well to do that.
Definitely, and for us, we're never selling anything directly to our users. You wouldn't try to sell a robot to an 8-year-old with cancer. So we're relying quite heavily on government institutions, on charities, on others where they are already working with these kids and can help us get our product to them.
Fantastic. I'm going to head over to Jean now. Thanks for being with us again. You're the founder and CEO of Konexio. You're working with marginalized and underprivileged populations. First of all, can you tell us more about the populations you're actually targeting?
Yeah, so I think we work at the intersection of two big issues today. One is that of the digital divide, and when you talk about that, we talk about the impact that the COVID crisis has had.
Sure.
Namely, for example, at the start of the COVID crisis in the US, only 4% of people without a high school education were able to work online. And we see that, on the other hand, there's a huge acceleration of digital transformation. That's about 7 years we jumped since the COVID crisis, but also we see that there's a huge segment of the population that is not ready. And so our job is to prepare and work to make sure that these populations, which include, for us, refugee and migrant populations, globally, people who are seeing parts of their jobs being transformed today, those who maybe have not finished school, those who are underrepresented in the tech sector. Our job is really to prepare them for the jobs of the future, at the same time through our training programs, through kind of the support services, the wraparound services that we provide. But our huge goal is really to work to bridge the digital divide and make sure that the most vulnerable have access to the same opportunities.
Okay, so there's a whole load of different programs and things that you're putting in place to actually help these people. That's correct.
Exactly. And so Konexio works at 2 levels.
Yeah.
In France, we are now spread across 3 regions. We've about more than 1,500 students trained at 70%, 2% placement rate 6 months after our training programs, either in jobs, continued training, or those who decide to become entrepreneurs on their own right and launch their own projects. And internationally, we've started developing programs more in partnership with institutions like the UN, where we have started deploying our training programs in a refugee camp in Malawi, in Jamaica, to 40,000 inhabitants, where we work to train local NGOs with our tools, our training materials, and the methods to send our students to online platforms to work. We see that, at the same time, there's this digital divide, but we also see that there's huge opportunity in the global gig economy that's been growing really fast, the remote economy of work. And so our opportunity is to also bridge the gap and allow our students to go to platforms like Upwork to bridge that gap by providing and seeking out new opportunities.
Yeah, okay. So you kind of a little bit answered this question, but Karen, I want you to answer this question as well. It's kind of addressed to both of you. So how do you actually identify those that are suffering? I mean, how do you actually reach out to them? Who do you speak to say, who can we help, Maybe first of all to Jean.
Yeah, so I think for us, there's a few different methods today, but one of them is really to go on the ground. And so obviously in France, our work is to go locally to the Pôle emploi, les missions locales, these local agencies, because one of the things we see is that there's some individuals, our target groups, that don't realize the full extent of their exclusion. For example, I always take the example of youth. We have a lot of youth who consider themselves digital natives. They're the first generation to have grown up with internet, with all these tools, except what we see is that there's 1 out of 2 youth coming from certain of these organizations that don't even have an email address, because they feel that using TikTok, Snapchat, all these digital tools on their phone, the social networks, is for them the mastery of digital tools. But when we ask them to, okay, do you have a LinkedIn profile? Do you communicate and dialogue with employers? And do you have kind of the social codes that are really important in today's age to really be able to go to the labor market? That's where we see a lot of huge barriers. And so one of our obstacles is really try to work with the students and also show them this is the extent of the opportunities. And also when we talk about digital skills and the mastery of digital skills today, it's not one monolith, it's actually very specific skills. So you can talk about becoming programmers, developing specific skill sets in cybersecurity or cloud computing, which we also offer. But there's also a very, very basic skill set, fundamental skill set at the beginning of kind of the spectrum that we also target. And so going on the ground, going in, taking some of our teachers with us and showing them these are the opportunities available is really important. And then on the ground in our work, we work heavily with huge partners like other NGOs like JRS in Malawi.
Yeah.
And they are kind of our operator, our muscle on the ground. And they go also to the local centers to really be able to search and identify the students.
Okay, Karen, same question to you. I mean, how are you helping those that need help from your society, your organization?
I think Jean is absolutely right that you have to be on the ground and you have to actually get to know your users. For us at No Isolation, we start a step before that, where we're going to be working with a lot of groups suffering from social isolation. So we haven't picked just kids with long-term illness or seniors. We're hopefully long-term going to be working with any group that is suffering from isolation due to external causes. And we've actually found a lot of help in statistics because Eurostat is tracking quite a lot and who reports being lonely and when does loneliness happen and it does happen in these larger life shifts. So if you lose a partner, if you get a diagnosis, that changes the way you have to live. If you move to a new city, all of those breaking points exposes you to loneliness. And for seniors, a lot of them happen at the same time, which is often why they are statistically more lonely than the rest of the population. So we kind of pick our groups there and then go on the ground where you have to get to know people because research is going to give you a bit of insight, but interviews and getting to know actual people is everything. So I completely agree with Jane there.
Okay. The whole world is going through a major crisis, of course, at the moment, and we're not out of it yet. I mean, COVID has just hit the world so hardly. Maybe how has COVID accelerated the need to be connected digitally, maybe for older people, Karen?
Yes, so we work with these kids, as I've mentioned, but we've also made a computer for seniors and those who are completely analog. So often suffering from some kind of cognitive difficulties or severe mobility issues or hearing and sight difficulties, something that will make it very hard for you to use a regular phone or tablet. And what we saw with the pandemic was a very increased awareness that we need to bring this group online as well. We were struggling with family members thinking that, okay, my 93-year-old grandmother with dementia, we don't need to bring her online because it will never work. Like that was an assumption that people had pre-COVID that I think is largely gone away, which is amazing for the 93-year-old grandmother who all of a sudden gets to go online, see photos of her family, maybe do video calls with her kids, and it really matters. Like this group benefits so greatly from things we take for granted, and I think it's as much as 75% of those over 75 in the EU has never used a video conversation or been in a video conversation. That is most likely changed through COVID, and I just think that's amazing.
Yeah, it is amazing. Jean, what was the impact of COVID on your work?
So I think we saw it as a catalyst in a sense because it really impacted our training activities at the start. We were forced to close down all our training centers, 25 of them, across different territories. And so I think what was really important was to say, first, how do we reach out and make sure our students they are okay? And so we found out that 50% of them either did not have the computers, the equipment to continue the training, or even if they did not have the connection. And so we really worked to adapt case by case to make sure that some of our trainings we have actually created online formats. And I think part of saying that no good crisis should come to waste. We really thought of how do we take in a sense, use of this opportunity to change our own functioning. And so some of our formats actually are more online and remote and actually work very well. We have trainers who are from different parts of the country who train students in also different parts of the country. But I think what's really important with our activities is realizing one, that the digital divide is more urgent, more now than ever, that we need to make sure those who are the first, the basic services of, society must be protected, and we, back to Karen and what she was saying, regarding the groups who are most socially isolated, finding ways to make them connect. And then second, thinking about what does this mean for kind of the skills of the future, the jobs that will be necessary. We know that in the next 10 years, it's about 1.2 billion jobs that are going to be impacted by digital transformation. And so how do we make sure that this will not lead to an even greater economic crisis?
Okay. Thank you, Jean. Karen, I'm going to come over to you again. No Isolation also works with children fighting loneliness and youth in a long-term care facility. Can you tell us a little bit more about this initiative? It's a really great one. Thank you.
No, we actually started the company because of these kids. So this is our heart. We found that kids who are taken out of school for longer periods of time, after a couple of months, the risk of them not returning, it starts increasing. and actually they're not getting close to as many visitors as they should. For every day that passes, it becomes harder for them to reach out to what has usually been their friends, and I think we can all recognize that calling someone that you haven't spoken to for months is much harder than calling someone you spoke to yesterday. So for these kids, just having a presence became our ultimate goal, and we created a telepresence robot for them that they can remote control from their sickbed and be in class. So they don't actually have to have anything to say and send a message. They can show up and just be a part, and if they want to comment, they can talk through the robot and they can see everyone and go out into the schoolyard if the other kids want to bring them along. And it's all about being there and actually participating.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. To both of you now, you're both expanding. I know that there's a lot of things to be done over the next 5 years, and I'd like you to expose maybe what you are hoping to achieve in the years to come. Let's move forward with Jean.
So our immediate plans are, in the next 3 years, we set a target to reach 10,000 students directly. Mm-hmm. And we have plans, so we've launched recently in Bordeaux in the south of France. We're launching in September in Lille in the north. And we have received requests from a dozen different cities to also really bring our programs. And so we're working to develop, a greater plan for scale in France. And at the international level, we're currently developing with our partners with the UN and JRS to launch our programs in Kenya and in Jordan, hopefully coming in 2022. So we see, the same issues, vulnerable youth, refugees, migrants, and we see the potential really to connect them with digital opportunities. And so that's going to be our next steps.
I'm going to come back to you in a minute when we go to our question and answer time, because I'd like you to think about it in the meantime. That's why I'm talking to you right now. You must have so many stories, interesting stories of people coming to you afterwards and saying how much you helped and what you actually did. If you can think about it, I'd love to have a story there in a minute. Coming back to you, Karen, what do you hope to achieve over the next 5 years, shall we say?
Well, it's all about scaling and reaching more people. We have a lot of work left to do in Europe. So now we've just opened an office in Germany, and we have one in London and Oslo. So I'm hoping that we'll be able to actually go to France within the next few years. And
You're welcome.
I think Europe holds a lot for us in the next 5 years.
Okay. Have you had time to think about it? I'd love to have a couple of anecdotes from you, Jean, of maybe people that have come back to you and said, this is how you actually helped me, this is my story kind of thing. Yeah,
so we do have a number of them who are actually willing and have shared our stories. So for example, one of our recent students, Laura, she did not have a high school degree. She was working as a waiter. She enrolled in one of our boot camp programs, was the first in her cohort to get hired in a multinational startup in a company where she's working now as a front-end developer. We have stories, for example, Stan in Malawi. He recently actually invited me to his wedding. I was not able to attend given the travel restrictions, but he was one of our students who was in the first cohort of our program in Malawi, was able to finish, became one of the lead instructors for the second cohorts. And to date, he has actually earned more than, I think, 40,000 on the platform collectively in the last 12 months. And we're working with him actually to develop a sort of agency where he actually will take bids from platforms like Upwork and help to manage them with local students so that they're really building up a kind of a local economy in the camp. Okay, and what about you, Karen? Do you have any interesting stories, people that have shared with you afterwards and have flourished thanks to your help? I guess plenty of stories on your side.
Yeah, no, we definitely do. I think the coolest ones are those who are unexpected, and we have a 17-year-old, or now she's probably not 17 anymore, 18 more like, who got a robot for attending school. She wrote to us saying that the most amazing thing about the robot was that her mom could bring her to the supermarket and she could actually be a part of shopping, but she had been indoors for however long, and and being able to go to the supermarket and say like, oh, I want that, instead of writing a list, that really mattered. It just goes to show like how important those tiny things are, and we all just expect them to be there for us. So yeah, and also there's quite a few senior stories where we have like old men who's refusing to go online and saying that tech is nothing for me, I don't want any device, and then their family comes there with the comp unit and sets it up, and they actually fall in love, which I think is so cool. So yeah.
Oh, it's fantastic to hear the stories, the success that is behind all the work that you're putting in there, which is fantastic. Well done, by the way. This is a really interesting talk for everybody that's watching us, I think. What are the biggest obstacles? We haven't really talked about the obstacles, but what are the obstacles that you are actually facing today? I guess there's still quite a few. Jean?
I would say moving forward, it's thinking about, how do we grow, how do we evolve to really meet the constantly changing, field of society, in the sense that we know the skills of the future are changing, and I think that is part of our mission, to be able to adapt and to anticipate, because we want to work with our students to make sure that they're prepared, they're upskilled for the future, but we work often also in conditions where they might not have the best equipment, they might have the best infrastructure, and so how do you achieve optimal training conditions whilst knowing that we might not have, the best equipment and everything necessary, and so that's going to be something that's going to be ongoing for us, and we would like to work towards, working with partners who can, help us in different regards, helps to alleviate some of these barriers. But I think it's this growing adaptation and realizing that as we grow, we're going to be increasingly globalized, and how do we make sure that, we're able to really unblock all these different kind of opportunities, but at a much larger scale.
You just mentioned partners, and I think this is an amazing stage here at VivaTech to sort of make yourself known and ask for help, because I guess we're on a global stage here, and it's a great opportunity. So think about it. If you have any partners that you'd like to ask for help, I'm going to go to Karen and ask her about the obstacles, and I'll come back to you on that one, Jean. Obstacles. What are you facing today, Karen?
Oh, I think complexity in itself is kind of always an obstacle for someone building a company. So any task can kind of be solved, but when you have to solve all of them at the same time, and none of them can be solved poorly, then that becomes the challenge. I also think Jean is touching on something extremely important. This world is changing so extremely fast.
Yeah.
And if we were 10,000 employees, then a couple of hundred could follow those trends. But now that's kind of left up to the few of us working on absolutely everything else as well. So I think keeping up with the very, very fast-paced world is one of the biggest challenges for any company of today.
Okay, and how can we actually concretely do that? Is it like more task force, more people, more partners, more people involved? I don't know. Karen?
I think events like this can be huge inspiration, meeting people. I think we should all be very, very keen on reading the latest research and trying to stay on top of the news.
Yeah.
There's a lot of local changes, which I think is maybe even a bigger challenge, especially for smaller companies, because like paying attention to local trends is even harder. But that also proves the need for diversity. Like, you have to have a work pool that doesn't just represent one demographic, like, because we're going to be personally interested in very different things. And if you have a workforce that are personally interested in a million things, then in total you're going to be much more equipped for a changing world in the future.
Okay. Coming back to you on the partnership question, is there anybody you'd like to, sort of call up and say, I need your help?
I would say we really work, in this partnership ecosystem. So would love to call out to, other corporate partners that we work with already today. Either during the program, we work with mentors, kind of soft skills training. They come in, the different members of different corporate teams to really work with our students and coach them. So that could be something where, we often seek, partnerships and support around, or even those, at later stages who actually recruit our talent, which, have included companies including Thales, Salesforce, the Bank of France, who've recruited our talent. So we're also looking for those who would be interested in working with us to identify and welcome our talent into their ranks.
Okay, and what about you, Karen, on your side? Anybody you'd like to sort of talk to or to, to collaborate with or to help you expand today?
I think I want to call out anyone and everyone who has a family member that they think cannot go online. I ask you to please rethink that and Google and see if there are solutions out there. In some cases, that might be our comp, and in other cases, there might be other brilliant tools. But I think we're going to be seeing a world where a lot of special equipment is coming, and a lot of it is going to be very, very good. So please don't give up on consumer tech just because we've seen some bad examples in the past few years. I would encourage everyone to do some research. And I'd also love for anyone working in public sector to reach out to us if they're interested in any type of loneliness work. We can do all types of partnerships there.
Okay, we don't have so much time left. We have 1 minute and 30 seconds, but I always like to finish on a sort of personal note because it's been so interesting speaking to both of you, and you're both extremely passionate about your work. Karen, just in a couple of words, how did you get involved in No Isolation? I mean, there's a story behind there for sure.
It definitely is. It's longer than 1 minute and 20 seconds.
No, but try and resume it in 50 seconds, can you?
Yeah, I can. I started studying computer science. I completely fell in love. It was like this exploratory world where you could invent anything, make anything. And then at the same time, you saw quite brutal industry, very cold, a lot of products made for efficient people, making people like me more efficient, and it just felt extremely unfair. Me and my co-founders discussed for a long time, almost 4 years, how most senior technology looks like Fisher-Price toys. Like, why does it have to be like that? So I think my passion comes from being able to make products that are respectful and inclusive and actually doesn't just target people like myself.
Okay, and Jean, just in a couple of words, where does your passion come from?
I would say it's, I was a researcher right before starting the organization, so I spent 2 years on the ground working with vulnerable populations. And I think my personal story, I'm an immigrant myself. I was born in a country, raised in another, and I feel like it's part of, a global community today that we live in, and we each have, kind of a right to belong to the society that we want to thrive and contribute towards.
Fantastic. Well, we've just run out of time. We're pretty much in time now. I'm quite pleased with myself there. Well done, girls, for keeping in the time. Thanks to both of you, and what a remarkable subject to treat today, which is inclusion and diversity. Thank you so much for being with us, both of you. Let's reconvene on the stage at 4 p.m. to explore how tech can fast-track green business models. Until then, a big thank you for being here and for connecting with us at VivaTech. I'll see you a little bit later on.